Hi all, it's a beautiful snowy Friday morning and I'm just going to throw a video together to walk you through the Chapter 17 WileyPlus assignment. This one has a few things. It might help to watch the video and watch it again as you're going through it. So there's two questions on here. The first one is a little more straightforward than the second. So we've got a company, we've got a starting balance, we've got some transactions, and we want to calculate the weighted average number of shares outstanding. So we will go through examples of this in class on Tuesday, Wednesday, the 9th, 10th, or 8th, 9th. And I will do a few. The issue here gets to be the stock dividends and the stock splits and taking them back to the beginning as if they happened on January 1. And I'm a little disappointed. It would have been nicer if this assignment had have given you a worksheet where you could have dropped the numbers in and done the calculations and kind of tested them step by step. Whereas this one, you just have to calculate the weighted average and stick it in. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. And you really have no idea why. But if you step through it, this will be very similar to the questions we do in class. And hopefully you can get there to get the weighted average. And then we're going to go through, once we have the weighted average, that's the bottom of our calculation. And the rest of this, I believe, all relates to preferred shares. So we had some 8% non-convertible, non-cumulative. We didn't declare, so go back to the class or to the notes to see how to treat those preferred dividends. Then we have them cumulative and go through the same thing. So again, just how do we treat a cumulative preferred dividend? And this one had a loss from discontinued operations. If you go back to our first intro lecture on this from Thursday, Friday, or go to BE 17.1, there's good examples there of how to treat the discontinued operations. So the weighted average calculation, I don't like that you get no feedback on why you're wrong. But other than that, this question is not too bad. The second one is where we get into diluted calculations, and there's a little more to it. So we have 59,700 common shares outstanding for the entire year. So my basic calculation is easy. I don't have to do a weighted average calculation. I do have some pref shares, so I have to deal with the pref dividends. We do have a tax rate. We need the tax rate when we do a diluted calculation for the convertible bonds. Again, as we'll go through in class, I'm going to pretend that the bonds got converted. If I'm pretending the bonds got converted, that would mean there would be no interest expense on the bonds. And interest is tax deductible, so if I didn't have interest expense, I would have to pay more tax. So I have to take into account that additional tax on the 22%. So this first one is just asking for the income effect of the dividends on preferred shares. So really we just want, what are the dividends on the preferred shares? On preferred shares and those dividends, the tax is irrelevant because dividends are not taxable. Basic earnings per share, okay. Subtract the preferred dividends if you have to. Again, go back to the rules and what we did on the first question here and what we did in the first class. Calculate the after-tax interest on the 10% bonds. So that's going to be my interest calculation. And then I'm going to take it times, I'm either going to subtract the taxes off of that or take it times 1 minus the tax rate is usually the way we express it. So in my example, the tax rate's 22%. So the after-tax interest paid would be the interest times 78%, right? 1 minus 22. Now, these steps we probably won't get through in class until Thursday, Friday. So if you're trying this before that, you might struggle. They want the incremental per share effect for each potential dilutive security. Boy, that's great wording. So what they're doing here is they just want you to calculate EPS for this security by itself. So for the bonds, what's the effect on the numerator? Well, that's the number we just calculated above, right? It's the interest times 1 minus the tax rate. That's how much our income would go up by if the bonds were converted. The denominator effect is the number of shares that would get created on the conversion. And that tells us the EPS for this potentially dilutive security all by itself. And that's an important number when we're doing calculations. To determine if this is dilutive or not, we need to figure out, well, what is it by itself? And that's what we're going to get out of here. We're going to do the same thing for the 3% preferred shares. So the numerator effect is the dividends we'll save, right? We wouldn't have to, if these got converted, we wouldn't have had to pay preferred share dividends, so my numerator would be higher, but my denominator would be higher by the number of shares I issued on the conversion. And again, I'd get a rate there. And then just rank the two of them. Most dilutive is the lowest number you got, right? The lowest earnings per share. So in my example, I think the preferred shares are more dilutive because, again, it's the math above, whatever's the lowest earnings per share. And that's how we calculate diluted earnings per share. We're going to start with the basic, then we're going to add the dilutive securities in order of most dilutive to least dilutive. Because again, what we're trying to get here is the lowest possible earnings per share. That's my earnings per share. So I'm going to take the worst security, the one with the lowest EPS, and put it in. And then I'm going to look at the subtotal. And if that subtotal is still a higher EPS than the next security, then I will roll that security in as well. If I do the subtotal and my EPS is already lower than the next security by itself, then I know that security is anti-dilutive and I wouldn't include it. Now in this example, they are both dilutive, so you'll have to walk through them both, and you just do it in order of most dilutive to least. And then we make a change in assumption on the preferred shares and put a different dividend on them. So do the same calculation as above to calculate the dividends, calculate the basic earnings per share. Again, will be different because the preferred dividends are different. Determine the incremental effect. So again, we're going to save more dividends, so the numerator is going to change because that's our dividends. And we will determine these are anti-dilutive because when you get to this number out here, the EPS, the number you're going to get is higher than the basic earnings per share. And if it's higher than the basic earnings per share, if I roll it in and include it in my diluted, it's going to make the number higher. And that's not the purpose of a diluted calc. Diluted, we're trying to get the lowest. And then they want the diluted earnings per share. Well, this would just be with the effect of the convertible bonds. Again, because the preferred shares are now anti-dilutive at that dividend rate. So there's a fair amount of calculations in this, a fair amount of step-throughs. And again, we probably won't cover this material in class till Thursday, Friday, just before the break. I think that's 11th, 12th. So if you're trying this before then, you might want to hold off or give it a go and good luck. Again, don't kill a bunch of time on this. If it's giving you grief, send me a message and I'll see if I can help. I am around all through the break week. I'm not sure I'll be sitting at a computer all day, every day, but I should be able to get back to you next day most of the time. All right. Hope that helps. Good luck. Talk to you later.